I've been using AI to make my YouTube content for months now, and today I want to show you why. For me, this journey began a little over 4 months ago. At that point, the refinement of AI image generation tools had hit a new plateau of capabilities, and I, like many others, were messing around with them to really see what could be done. And if you have any sort of content creation job, you're probably always on the lookout for tools that can make your job more efficient, and AI tools are promised to do exactly that. However, like most powerful tools, there's a learning process and some caveats. So my editor Alex and I had both been experimenting on our own with AI art tools like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney. So we decided to see what they could make of a Halo Infinite video thumbnail on YouTube. Now, I personally really like Halo Infinite, but historically the Halo IP just hasn't been a good topic for generating views, at least on my channel. So I wanted to see if I could generate a thumbnail that was a bit more intriguing than a typical Master Chief screen grab. So we booted up Midjourney and started playing around with prompts. We started with the concept of Master Chief holding a controller. Midjourney has been trained to know a lot about pop culture stuff like video games and movies, so if you ask it for Halo Master Chief or the Terminator, and you'll generally get something that looks like it's from Halo or Terminator. From the initial prompt, we did some variations, but none of them really nailed the concept of the video. Then we tried getting a little weird with it. What if the controller was wired directly into the Master Chief's head? And while the results weren't immediately recognizable as, say, a Halo game, they still looked pretty close, almost like a spin-off or alternate version of the franchise's iconic character design. From there, we did a handful of variations to refine the image, and finally Alex brought the one that we liked best into Photoshop, cleaned up some of the weird bits while making it fit YouTube's 16:9 aspect ratio for thumbnails. In less than 30 minutes of trial and error, Midjourney had made something that fit the concept of the video. Kind of a weird take on Master Chief, and the video did alright, but clearly there was more learning to do with the software. And thus, we began a much deeper journey with AI design tools. Early on, we were bouncing between Stable Diffusion and Midjourney. Stable Diffusion is essentially a collection of tools and software that lets you create and use custom AI models to make a wide variety of stuff like images, text, video, and more. And if you're into this type of thing, you may have already seen Corridor Digital's anime rock, paper, scissors video. They use Stable Diffusion in combination with decades of combined VFX experience to create that video. Now, obviously, our uses were much more mundane compared to what they're doing, but who knows, someday we could evolve to that. My editor Alex was actually using a Stable Diffusion model that's been trained on Midjourney images, which is interesting. Midjourney kind of being the gold standard for AI art at the moment. The results were generally pretty usable. Stable Diffusion is incredibly powerful and it's free, which is great, but it's also much more manual than Midjourney. We got some great results out of it, but after a while it was clear that Midjourney was just churning out better content in a shorter period of time. The last video that we used Stable Diffusion for was one where I talked about waiting 15 years for Stalker 2. We did about 100 different generations for that thumbnail, and each one took roughly 40 seconds. And while the final result was pretty good, it was hard to argue that the process was just much cleaner and faster in Midjourney. But even then, Midjourney rarely produces a fully finished thumbnail. My Unreal Engine 5 Forest Assets video, for example, has an image of a guy that we generated with Midjourney, and the background of the thumbnail is actually from the video itself. And this is another avenue that's really attractive with AI. If you just need like an original element or a character for a thumbnail to suit a specific concept, you can have AI crank out tons of options and then just composite them together in Photoshop how you want. However, even as we continued to use things like Midjourney, the versions of it updated and became massively more powerful to the point where cutouts were just less necessary and the touch-ups were becoming less needed. I think we started with Midjourney 3 and currently we're on version 5, and this version has really been groundbreaking for us. It can render out lifelike images of people with correct proportions and realistic poses, and the hands are actually starting to look realistic as opposed to nightmares. And the crazy thing is that it's taken barely a year to get from version 1 of Midjourney to version 5. These are comparison images of the same prompt used in version 1 versus version 5. I can't even imagine what the future of Midjourney is going to look like, considering just how far it's come in such a short period of time. Now, if you've never seen how Midjourney works, it's actually really simple. For us, we take our concept and break it down into 4 basic elements: perspective, subject, environment, and style. Now, there's a lot of different ways of crafting prompts for Midjourney to get your desired output, but this is just what's worked best for us. Why don't we try creating something now? How about, say, a Star Wars themed thumbnail of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Since Star Wars is a pretty popular thing, Midjourney likely already has a ton of training on it. Now, because this is for a YouTube thumbnail, the subject is going to need to fill as much of the frame as possible so that it reads well on, say, a mobile device while you're scrolling through. So I'll say medium close portrait. That tells Midjourney that I'm looking for a shot that has Obi-Wan's chest and head in frame. Next, I'll ask for Obi-Wan Kenobi in Jedi robes. Now I'll give it an environment to place Obi-Wan in. Let's say the ruins of a Jedi temple. And since Disney loves setting every Star Wars thing on Tatooine, let's set the temple in a desert. Now I'll pick a time of day and the style of the lighting that I want. Finally, I'll set the aspect ratio to 16:9 and then basically engage Midjourney. And the first results are pretty spot on. The resemblance to Ewan McGregor's version of Obi-Wan is pretty darn close, and the setting seems right. But of course, we gotta tweak things. Let's make it a little more dramatic by setting the time of day a bit later, and we need something that feels a bit more like Star Wars, such as a lightsaber. This one looks pretty great, but I want a slightly more dramatic pose, and the lightsaber should be blue, of course. I can tweak his pose by saying stuff like posing heroic or fighting stance. But as you can see, the more complex the prompt gets, the less detailed and specific certain areas of the image look, so let's just knock down the complexity a bit by dropping down the bit about his hood. And boom, there's a pretty solid image. Now, of course, you might notice a few issues, like how Obi-Wan has 6 fingers and is missing the Jedi temple, but this image works great, and the additional detail of a Jedi temple would probably just get lost when the image is shown as a tiny thumbnail on YouTube anyway. As you can see from this example, Midjourney is extremely powerful, but it gets even crazier. Let's say the whole desert background thing isn't the look that we want. What if he was on the bridge of a ship instead? What about the forest moon of Endor? Heck, let's change it to Han Solo holding a lightsaber instead. With just a few tweaks, you can kind of achieve almost anything if you know the right prompts. And the crazy part is that this whole sequence of experimenting and getting the final image of Obi-Wan, it took barely more than 10 minutes. Now, of course, the catch here is that you are still at the mercy of random image generation. Midjourney has trained and retrained on its own images by the developers based on what users like the most. So it's getting much better at coming up with a prompt that you want quickly. But even in my short example, it created very different results each time. And if I just keep running the same prompt over and over and over, each generation will still be pretty unique. Sometimes it might take a while to get exactly what I'm looking for. And sometimes Midjourney will make an image that shows your entire prompt, while other times it'll be missing stuff like the Jedi temple that you asked for. Using Midjourney for situations where you might not know exactly what you want in the first place is absolutely perfect. But when trying to get a very specific image, it can get a bit tricky and requires a deeper understanding of the prompts in the first place. Now, all that said, it just wouldn't make sense for me to use AI art for every video, at least not yet. In fact, I generally prefer to use a real image of a game or topic that I'm covering, since the more accurate the image is to the subject, the better it serves to bring in viewers that actually want to watch the specific subject matter. But now that we know the power of AI, sometimes it's faster or more effective to just generate a scene versus trying to recreate it in game and take a screenshot. For example, this thumbnail that we made from Boundary, the new astronaut shooter, came from attempting to get in-game shots that just never quite felt right. I wasn't really happy with any of them. After trying to clean up a few of the in-game images and still not being happy, we threw some prompts at Midjourney until we came up with this one. Sometimes you just need a simple image that clearly illustrates what the video is about in basic terms, and nothing says space FPS like a shot of an astronaut holding a gun. Now, we could have achieved this in-game by removing the heads-up display, getting somebody to pose in a specific situation, and getting that exact shot, then cutting away the menus and tweaking it in Photoshop, which is something that I used to do all the time in the past, but it's becoming less necessary now that we have Midjourney as a tool. AI art generators are becoming incredibly valuable tools for saving time. It's not to say that it's making images that I couldn't make otherwise, it's just doing them faster and close enough to what I want. If you're watching a YouTube channel that uploads content pretty regularly, well, those videos go from concept and scripting to upload and live usually in less than 24 hours. Content creators need to turn things around fast, and taking hours out of your production schedule to shoot thumbnails isn't always feasible. Now, of course, we tested other AI tools like ChatGPT with regards to things like script writing and finding information. And if you don't know what ChatGPT is, it's one of the leading OpenAI language bots that can write a novel for you or just answer questions about specific things. I find it incredibly useful when needing to look up info really quickly, like getting specific sales data on a video game, or collating the information about games, or getting the history of something. For my recent video about amazing games that failed, I asked ChatGPT to give me some interesting bullet points on those titles since I hadn't played them in years, and it reminded me about certain things that were popular back when those games launched. However, in terms of writing out actual scripts, ChatGPT's styling is super formulaic to the point where it just feels very soulless. And even then, I don't think I would ever want to give my voice over to a computer's writing style. It just feels wrong. But it can be used as a grammar editor or sentence structure editor, which can be nice, though again it tends to format things more like a college essay, which sounds very weird when reading it back. It also has a tendency to write very confidently while also being completely wrong about certain things, so you do have to check it and make sure you're not taking all of the information at face value. And I actually have ChatGPT cite its sources when I'm looking up factual information, so that's also super helpful. And even despite some of the drawbacks, this AI tech has improved massively since we started using it. How much longer will it be before AI is just simply better than me at writing a script or creating a thumbnail? Like, in a year, am I even gonna need the help of an editor, or will I just be able to throw my footage into an AI video tool and it'll spit out a completed project? You better believe that the video editing softwares are starting to integrate AI tools, and it's only a matter of time before we get there. That said, AI has taught me that there's a huge difference between creating something competently and injecting personality and skill into something. Anyone can make a competent video about Battlefield 2042 that's well researched and informative, but not everyone can make a Battlefield 2042 video that has a unique personality and entertaining style. AI hasn't quite cracked that code yet. And while it can replicate humans very accurately at times, its models are still based on work that we've already done, so it's more lacking when it comes to actually innovating. That said, AI is getting better and faster than we can even keep up with. Games are already out that use AI to drive NPC interactions, having dynamic conversations, and the results are honestly incredible. There's new AI tools popping up in just about every industry, and in some of them they're having radical effects. But again, just because it's easy to make something with AI doesn't mean it's easy to make something that people like with AI. We're quickly approaching a major turning point with tech, and I honestly have no idea what's going to come from it. But in my line of work, it has quickly become a major asset to productivity. Hopefully it remains the tool that I use versus something that completely replaces me. What are your thoughts on new AI tools? Are you using them in your work? If so, let me know. I'd be really curious about it. And up next, check out this video about how AI is going to save gaming from cheaters. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.